An African mask is a phenomenon, a spirit. The mask is always a spirit.
Master, you give me money and I go for bush and buy a very beautiful piece.
In order to get to know African art, Africans have to travel to Europe. It's the only place they can see the really interesting items.
I don't have any money on me. My wealth consists of my collection.
These sculptures are a disease. Sometimes it gets too much for me, too full. The collection is a lot of work. Masks from Nigeria, in Bavaria. Gerd Stoll is a collector of African art. In his hotel by the Königssee, he exhibits masks, sculptures, and nail fetishes from Nigeria, next to the Baroque Madonna.
And these are my favourites, Ibechi sculptures. They were made after the death of twins, because the Yoruba believe that the souls of twins were inseparable.
Collectors like the hotelier Stoll make every sacrifice for their collection.
A collector will often be driven into ruin because he desperately wants to obtain a certain piece.
Dr. Schedler has travelled to Africa many times. For decades, the collector has been a popular expert at art auctions.
Africa. Some of it's the thirst for adventure. Negro dances, that's what they were called. That's what everybody wanted to see. It was a matter of desire, African art. You fell in love with it.
His most recent acquisition is an Ipa mask from Nigeria. The mask weighs 30 kilos and was held above a dancer's head by 2 sticks. This was only possible while in trance.
Art collectors are like hunters. Basically children that desperately want a certain toy, and the moment they get it, they put it away.
A gallery in the heart of Zurich specialises in antique sculptures and traditional masks from Africa, enriching everyday life with images of fascinating, distant places. Collecting art is a status symbol, though antique art from Africa promises more than that.
People long for this native, black, old and extinct continent. Distant places and the unknown, the darkness and the magic. Once you know why people collect the art, a cunning tradesman will use this knowledge to his advantage and provide the customer with the appropriate selling points. A catalogue suddenly gains importance, an origin is added. All this increases the value, and with that the gallery owner promotes himself, or the gallery, or the auction house. Sotheby's and Christie's invest millions into marketing, just to make their name stand out.
Brussels. The trade fair for non-European art showcases antique art from Africa. A few years ago, masks, cult items, and everyday tools were considered to be primitive tribal art. Since then, their reputation and value have grown. The art fair is a meeting point for traders and collectors from around the world. This year, Brussels gallery owner Didier Claires is once again running the event.
I started my business about 20 years ago, when I traveled to Africa in search of various items. Soon I realized I was 40 years too late. To be able to offer a high-quality standard on the market, I look for old collections belonging to important families, to collectors that have been bringing back items to Europe for more than 100 years.
I think that is our pleasure, is hunting.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you know, you find the piece, you can know that there are at least 10 to 20 people who are fighting for it. You have institutions, you have museums, you have collectors, you have dealers. It's la bonne guerre. Well, everybody's fighting because we all have, you know, a very constant taste. Whoever pays the most wins.
Carl Friedrich Schedler was a collector, and like many others, he became a dealer and an expert. A middleman approaches him. The masks are in his suitcase, and he's hoping for a good deal. But the experienced Schedler is skeptical.
There's nothing left in Africa. It was bled dry more than 20 years ago. Of course, you could go down there for a few months and plow through the bushes. You might even find a mask, but the good ones are already in Europe or America.
In the street cafes, collectors show each other their trophies. They compare style, material, and patina. They examine origin and age and estimate the value. Zakaria Konandu has travelled to the trade fair in Brussels from Cameroon.
He's not from Gabon.
He's meeting collector Anita Schroeder from Munich in a hotel room where Zakaria has spread out his treasures.
Yeah, but it's a late style.
But the expert isn't making business easy for him.
It's very old, but it's not a masterpiece, but it's interesting. And
Where is the rappel?
I would say 8 to 10,000 maybe.
I give you for 4,000.
For 4,000, okay? In a gallery, maybe it could be more.
Ça, c'est done.
Done, yeah.
He's very old now.
You think very old?
Very, very old.
Yeah, but this style, I don't know.
See, he's very old.
My intuition is that this also not so old. I'm sorry. No?
The Galerie Valou in Zurich is a family business. The father travelled to Africa decades ago, and the art he brought back is now a profitable commodity for his son, Jean David. The last couple of years haven't been easy, so the art trader is exploring new markets. Jean David relies on internet retailing nowadays.
This is a scene with my father in Togo. Looks like he's greeting some middlemen. And he'll probably buy something later. This is where my father set up the first museum in Africa. His goal was to exhibit items from all over the continent. We took over the gallery in Zurich, while my father ran a museum and a gallery in Africa. Ah, very nice. This was a swimming pool that extended to the bedroom.
Gallery owner René David's second marriage was to Ina Mekba, a Togolese woman. Traditional art never interested me. They never taught us anything about our culture in school. When I met my husband, he became my teacher. René helped me understand voodoo cult objects. I've learnt a lot. In the past, the people of West Africa were inspired by nature and their gods, believing in the immortality of their ancestors. In Togo and Benin, the old voodoo religion lives on to this day.
concernant les objets,
I didn't know about the cult items.
Alors, à partir de notre rencontre, il a commencé à me faire visiter des temples où il y avait des fétiches.
We visited the voodoo temples and spoke with priests. He was initiated and familiar with the voodoo rites.
Dans ce milieu-là. Au début, j'étais un peu réticente parce que aujourd'hui,
At first, I was apprehensive. We're Christians and we're taught to avoid such things.
Comme on est chrétien aujourd'hui et tout ça, on nous apprend les...
René showed me to respect these items.
Grâce à lui, j'ai pu garder une certaine ouverture au niveau de l'esprit et puis j'ai pu admirer certaines choses et c'était magnifique.
The couple has been living in Togo for decades, and they know how to present themselves. Inam David is a businesswoman. The trade in Togo is flourishing, and there are no strict regulations on the import of art from neighbouring countries. The capital is a hub. Although according to international laws, the items would not be allowed to cross borders. It is estimated that nearly 1 million people in Africa live off manufacturing and trading carvings and masks, skillfully crafted replicas and simple copies included. Saliu Sariki is the manager of the market in Lomé. He can hardly show any local work because the business thrives on contraband from Nigeria, Benin and Mali.
There are about 600 art dealers, most of them from Nigeria. But it's possible to obtain art from other countries as well, because Lomé is a crossing point. It's where traders stock up on goods for Europe. You only have to declare the things you want to export, but it's forbidden to export human skulls. If they catch you doing that, you will be arrested and punished.
The market for fetishes in Lomé. Gerd Kiesi, a photographer and collector from Tyrol, has been living here for 50 years.
Long before I even owned a decent mattress, I was collecting sculptures in my flat. In 1964, I was working at Albert Schweitzer's hospital and was introduced to African art for the first time.
Das erste Mal in meinem Leben in Kontakt gekommen bin mit afrikanischer Kunst. Und die Motivation
I found these items to be so exciting and beautiful that I wanted to own them. I wanted to live with these objects.
Haben möchte. Ich möchte mit diesen Dingen leben.
He found 3,000 objects and a dream. He wanted to give the people of his hometown, Schwarzenintau, an understanding of the foreign masks and beautiful sculptures. He dedicated himself to this cause for decades, until he was able to open his Museum de Fulka in 1995. In the first years, the reactions in Tyrol towards African treasures were mixed. But Gerd Kiesi stayed true to his mission.
I have always tried to understand the beauty of the world and to show it in my collection. In my opinion, there are no differences between mask cults worldwide. People in the countryside live in dreading fear of nature. They battle nature in its hostile form constantly. This used to be the case in Tyrol and is still partly the case in Africa.
My love for Africa started with the Tarzan movies when I was about 20. It fascinated me. The natives with the old things, the shields, the weapons, the spears. This was with the Dogon, mask dances. I brought cigarettes and cigars. African men always respond to that. A beautiful old dancing mask that was actually used. I was even able to take a photo with the dancer himself, and his son sold it to me.
The land of the Dogon is located in the west of Mali, a paradise for tourists, longing for masks and myths.
We draw our inspiration from sacred objects and the tradition. The copies I carve are based on them, but of course they're not wholly themselves.
Today, the masks of the Dogon fill museums and living rooms of rich collectors overseas. Old masks haven't been discovered here in a long time. Entire villages live off carving masks for foreigners. But the village elders still know how to differentiate between junk and the heritage of their ancestors.
The masks are only brought to the light of day on special occasions. When our senior priest dies, the masks are used for dancing at his funeral for 5 to 10 days, just like our ancestors taught us.
The masks in cult and ritual. Only while moving, the masks come to life. A sculpture and its mask are inhabited by the spirit. It brings the ancestors to the present. The spirit is summoned into the wood, and its body moves dynamically and frantically, although the face remains static. In trance, spirits rise that aren't visible to the human eye. What remains in the museum is only a dead fragment of the actual mask. Only the upper layer is visible. The substance and netting underneath are missing, and the dancing fever and the trance are gone. Masks in ritual, on the other hand, can make ancestors speak and give advice for the future.
We currently own a fantastic Dogon collection from Belgium. A big problem is that collectors are getting a bad name for depriving the culture of these items.
Der Kultur diese Objekte entziehen.
The museum was a moral decision for me as well. I wanted other people to participate in the message such a collection can spread.
Masks spread fear and respect. Masks are an expression of power originating from the world of natural spirits and ancestors. In many parts of Africa, people lived without clothes before the Islamic and Christian missionaries arrived. Only the chosen ones wore masks. They were a symbol of power.
I see my collection as a personal gain. Art is often a form of disorientation. To live somewhere else where you don't actually live. A person that lives somewhere else in his or her head needs the unusual, the foreign. I always stayed here and never traveled to Africa, but in my head I've always been in Africa. I need this so-called disorientation. For me, it's a different country. In some way, a country of miracles.
Wunderland.
The art historian Dr. Romuald Chibozo studied in Germany. Today, he travels back and forth between Berlin and his home country, Benin. Chibozo is researching the perception of African masks and items in Europe.
The first time I saw traditional African art was in the Ethnological Museum in Berlin.
à Darlem.
When we were young, we were forbidden to get too close to these kind of objects because they were sacred.
Un caractère sacré.
We were afraid to get near them, so we didn't have the chance to appreciate their value.
On ne pouvait pas apprécier leur qualité.
Dr. Aisha Laidu was born in Niger in West Africa. She spent half of her life studying in Germany and earning her PhD. In Berlin, she rediscovered the cultural treasures of Africa. Of course you see some art as a child. That's just part of life over there. We mostly don't see it as art, but as our way of life, our tradition, and our culture. What's the art doing in these museums? Why are they being exhibited here and not in Africa? You can't say that African art is entirely decolonized. Africa's treasures were being preserved in European museums. 100 years ago, traders and scientists brought fetishes, cultural and everyday items to Europe from the colonies. Often, they considered themselves saviours. They believed they were saving the items from decay in Africa. Not only nature, but mainly the invasion of civilization had endangered old cults and their sacred items. Europeans benefit from the art. We are wealthy and can afford whatever we want, even things belonging to other cultures. We can afford to own this exotic part of Africa.
All the significant masks have left Africa. Africa itself doesn't own any originals anymore.
Véritablement de masques originels. Donc, les Africains.
If Africans want to see traditional African art, they can only do so through the Western portrayal and presentation.
De l'Occident.
I was the first African who worked for the Department of Art History at the Humboldt University in Berlin. I have been researching the perception of traditional African art because I want to understand how people see the art today. Most Europeans transfer their own perception onto other cultures. In 1979, journalists wrote about African art, calling it children's art at the most.
C'était un art d'enfant.
Romuald Chibozo in a village in his home country, Benin. He has been following the tracks of old masks and has found that they are still being used ritually.
In the countryside, people still keep simple but important masks. But the items that remain are nothing compared to the items that are gone. Gelede is a mask dance of the Yoruba. The head of this mask represents the way the people in this village perceive their environment and how their environment is controlled.
Les Yoruba perçoivent le monde. Comment est-ce que le monde est régi?
Many collectors only consider masks that have been used in a ritual to be genuine. 120 years ago, cultural scientists from Europe had taken away these symbols of old beliefs. Museums were created to store the African treasures.
I was told that a temple in Benin was for sale. Apparently, the family that maintained the cult and owned the temple had converted to Islam.
In ihrer Gesamtheit zum Islam übergetreten ist. Und der Marabu,
And Marabu, an Islamic missionary, was asking them to sell or burn their old costumes. Actually, he said they had to burn them.
hat eigentlich gesagt, sie müssen sie verbrennen.
The family heard there was someone who might buy the costumes, and that's how they came into my possession.
Sind diese Kostüme zu mir gekommen. Auch christliche Missionare.
Likewise, Christian missionaries attempted to destroy Africa's cultural assets, because any form of art, especially with a ritual connection, is part of African identity.
It's obvious that the older the masks are, the more interesting they appear, because you get the feeling you can experience your own history and culture through them. Christians, Islamists and colonizers tried to destroy African history, tried to make it seem like Africans didn't have any. Which is wrong, seeing that Africa is the source of history altogether. That's why old art can still be found in West Africa. Excavations in Nigeria. The culture of the Nok dates back nearly 1,000 years before Christ. The discovery of their terracotta figures made them famous. The Nok already extracted iron ore and made tools from it. As of yet, their statues and amulets belong to the oldest form of figural art in Africa south of the Sahara. These advanced civilizations are still mostly uncharted. Cultures and realms have been forgotten due to the lack of written documentation and hence any memory of them. The men are proud of their findings, which can enable them to track the roots of their own history.
Magana.
African art is proof of an advanced civilization. I always tell Africans, it's proof that you had one of the greatest cultures in the world. We often speak about the objects, the masks and the fetishes, but the art of the royal courts in the 14th century is forgotten, not even to mention Nigeria and Benin, where you can find items more than 1,000 years old. That's evidence of a very ancient culture. Maybe the Western world was still living in caves while Africa already had kingdoms.
A throne in the Berlin Museum. The masterpiece from Cameroon has been in the museum for 100 years. Back then, the king had to settle for a copy of his own throne. The German emperor and the king of the Benin, Sultan Joya. His kingdom was assigned to the German colony of Cameroon. Only a couple of years later, the Germans deprived the king of his throne. There is also the old art that was brought to Europe by the colonial masters. These things are still here. They are missing in Africa. They're pieces of African history. The conquerors were deeply impressed by the craftsmanship of the Benin. Museum directors in Berlin and Leipzig raved about the king's throne, Mandu Yenu. Pressured by the colonial administration, Njoya agreed to consider the throne a gift to the emperor. The throne was moved to the museum in Berlin, and the Sultan was given a mechanical orchestrion in return. Today, his grandson, Mbomba Njoya, sits on the replica from the colonial days.
Over there you can see my grandfather's actual throne. My kingdom is 600 years old. You can't simply erase 600 years with a stroke of a pen.
I believe it was plain robbery. It was to show, I own this land and I am powerful. For me, it was colonization in its purest form, and that's undeniable. The Swiss gallery owner René David is familiar with these allegations. Due to historical experience, European art dealers are considered art thieves by Africans. But David wanted to make a change, and he opened a museum right at the hub of the West African art trade.
René David really is a man with a great passion for art. He loves African art. He'd probably devour it. And suddenly Mr. David had opened a museum.
Juste après notre mariage,
Shortly after our wedding, René suggested buying a house and setting up a museum.
j'étais réticente.
I was scared,
J'avais peur.
but he said, don't hesitate, it's going to be great.
Ne t'inquiète pas, on va faire quelque chose qui sera
It
bien.
provides us with the possibility to educate people, to show them what African art really is.
Qu'est-ce que c'est que l'art africain?
I own a lot of original masks from Africa. I'm going to bring my entire collection from Switzerland back to Africa. Get to work. After all, the museum is for you. It's for Africans and not for tourists.
Being the only museum that exhibits a large collection of items from all over the continent, it has become a magnet for collectors and traders. In the villages in Togo, the voodoo belief still lives on. Objects of nature serve as a vessel for ancestors and spirits. The Swiss dealer René David was a welcome guest. For the villagers, the sacred items present a connection to their own ancestors. The voodoo priest is an oracle, therapist, and confidant for the most intimate concerns. His tools are very sought after by travelling dealers.
I've been on many shopping trips. For a single object, you have to hit the road 5 times.
We travel to Benin, Ghana, and Burkina Faso. If you want to purchase decent items, you have to travel a lot. And for something really good, you sometimes even have to risk your life.
The traders Omar Betouré and Hosseini Bida travelled from the capital to the distant village of Seko. They specialise in sacred items.
The piece we saw today is at least 100 years old. I offered to pay 300 euros, but he declined. The family notices when you replace a fetish. He can't do that. He told me to forget about it, otherwise it could lead to someone's death. My death or his. Sometimes we buy objects for 150 euros and sell them for 450 euros. After subtracting the costs for transport, etc., we're left with a small amount to live off.
The prices puzzle me. Sometimes you read in the newspaper that items we sold are going for 7,500 euros in Europe. Fetishes and objects that you can purchase here for about 1,500 euros can easily be sold for 200 times that amount in Europe.
I've known Mr. René David for a long time. And I also know Mr. Kezi, who has been living here with us for quite some time. Occasionally he leaves, but he always comes back. He's a good man, and he buys our items. He isn't complicated. He's a very nice man.
Gert Kezi is an expert on the scene. Traders like him organise transport across the borders, often bypassing the export regulations of neighbouring countries. Real or fake, people fear Kezi's experienced eye.
Is that your warehouse? You have a lot of things.
Here, look at my ibechi from the Yoruba.
Are these originals or are they fake?
They're in between.
That's an interesting answer. I can learn something from you.
This one is a fetish from Ghana, from the Ashanti.
It's supposed to be from the Ashanti? The wood's too light for the Ashanti.
No, it's in between. Some of them are heavy and some of them are light.
Basically, I'm Togolese. I used to be your uncle's customer. You've been working for me for 40 years, packaging the items and handling customs.
How do you carry on trade with Nigeria? You can't just leave the country. You have to take forbidden paths to bring the goods to Lomé.
Avant de faire entrer les choses à Lomé.
A village on the border to Benin. The carver Amidou Gentil works here with his family.
I can sell you this mask for 75 euros. I have 2 wives and 8 children, one here and one in Cameroon. We live off this work. Business isn't going well. The dealers come to us and always talk about the crisis. But when will this crisis actually end? We, the artists, are asking you Europeans whether you've run out of paper to print your money over there.
There have been strange developments, especially in the field of art. An item you bought or traded for a pair of sneakers 20 years ago might now be worth thousands of euros.
Every collector has his trusted dealer. Kurt Wagner from Munich has built a friendly business relationship with the gallery owner Jean David. The auction expert advises his customer before the auctions. There are a lot of tricks.
This one is worth about 2,000 to 3,000 euros.
I can't buy everything, so what do you need? What do I need?
But you do know that that's forbidden.
There have been auctions where I was sitting at the back, while a friend of mine was bidding at the front. And when I coughed, he would put his hand down.
And the dealer in Africa tells me that if he sells me the objects for 100 euros, I can resell it for 1,000 euros. And I say the same thing. When I make 1,000, Sotheby's makes 10,000.
The spiritual feeling that the carver has imbued into the figure transcends any categorization of African art or Fang sculpture. It gives the sculpture a kind of universal presence, which any lover of art can immediately recognize.
There is a lot of money in the business of African art worldwide. So obviously, clever marketing is a necessity. This includes catalogues, nice pictures, great exhibitions. In the end, it's a product, like a product in any line of business. If Nestlé wants to launch a new yogurt, they will try to sell it as best they can. And if they succeed, the product sells well. For example, you can buy mineral water for 1 to 10 euros. It's the same water in every bottle. It's the marketing that makes the difference, and it's the same with African art.
auch bei afrikanischer Kunst.
The auction houses obviously play a big role. There are different ways to manipulate the value of an item, and this is often done shamelessly. Sometimes dealers rebuy their own items at a high price in order to have a reference price.
An authentic piece has to really catch your eye. The first glance has to be enough. Is it fake or real? Even for an art collector, it's difficult to get the hang of these things.
The Club of Collectors travels to Europe's events. In the prestigious bookshop Fischbacher, they are greeted by a familiar face. Heinrich Schweitzer is head of the African department at Sotheby's in New York and has just released a book about the splendid collection of a rich American. Visions of Grace also depicts the origin of the sculptures and masks.
Needless to say, it improves the value of the collection. The fact that it is shown in a book makes it a famous collection. And it was written by Schweitzer. Everybody is interested in it. Sotheby's is interested because its name appears in it, and because the boss wrote it. The collectors are interested because their items are made public, and that raises the price of the collection.
A collector only considers goods with a North American or European certificate to be valuable.
I'm thinking about Sotheby's or Christie's. These are stock-based companies. They make a turnover of 10 billion. The companies are backed by stockholders who probably don't even care about the art. Maybe the employees put in a lot of effort, but the shareholders want to see a profit. That's the number. That's 10 billion earned with art. And that's only the amount they officially declare. The people up there don't mess around. They take it damn seriously. They don't think it's funny.
Sotheby's spent $42 million alone on the sale of an African art collection belonging to a hairdressing empire. The jewel in the collection, a female Sanufo figure that was auctioned off for a record price.
$600,000. $10,600,000.
The ancient sculptures of the Nok were once extremely expensive. The collection of terracotta busts is Gert Kesey's pride and joy. When the Nok were discovered, it became a sensation. However, years later, the market was flooded with Nok figures, and as a result, the value decreased.
These sculptures are all broken when they are found. There is a lot of confusion, which you can only understand if you know the excavation circumstances. It's a politically restricted area, if you will.
Half a century ago, the United Nations established rules to regulate the exportation and theft of art. But the illegal traffic across the borders of Nigeria and Togo has not ceased as a result of this.
They dig holes and collect the broken pieces. You might find the hand, while someone else finds the body, and yet another person finds the arms and legs. Afterwards, you take the individual pieces to a restorer, and he combines the pieces in order to complete the sculpture.
There was a very famous sculpture that was fantastic and had great artistic value. After a couple of years, it completely changed color, so it became noticeable that it had been altered a lot. Ultimately, it's fairly easy to do so. You pulverize the old broken pieces that aren't worth a lot, mix them with water and create sludge from which you can create a new object. Obviously, you have to support the structure somehow. X-rays can help you detect if the sculpture contains iron or wood.
lässt sich dann natürlich leicht feststellen.
Via a CT scan, layer by layer is revealed. The expert can then determine the age of the materials used and detect patchwork.
In Nigeria, everything is forbidden. Unlike here in Togo, if you want a knock object, I can bring it to you in a couple of minutes. It's like getting bread. In Nigeria, on the other hand, everything takes place secretly. I have been to the digging areas twice and could never get anything. It was impossible. And then, suddenly, the objects surfaced in Togo. It was very exciting, because they brought them there using onion trucks, hiding the objects underneath the onions. Although it wasn't really hiding, since it wasn't forbidden to import them. It's fascinating that you can't find a certain item in one place, but suddenly someone offers it to you 1,000 kilometers away.
Middlemen hand out Sotheby's and Christie's catalogues to carvers and artists, who then use them as a reference. Documents of origin are then written by the middlemen in the capital or overseas. Whether or not the work of a carver becomes a fake is determined by the paperwork. Falsely dated documents are used to deceive the buyer.
I work with the entire world. I have customers in Germany, the United States, France, and everywhere else. What else are we supposed to do? Without the copies, we wouldn't be able to survive. The ideas come to me at night. I take a photo from the catalogue. This one is a Sanji statue from Gabon with missing feet. I would replicate it perfectly, only adding the feet.
Moi, je vais reproduire la même chose. Je vais mettre le pied.
When the statue surfaces on the market, I can prove that it is not the same one. I can replicate every single piece in the museum, and you wouldn't be able to tell them apart.
Même pour vous, je dépose comme ça les deux. Vous n'allez pas savoir pour vous dedans.
My chickens help me with the patina. For the first and second layer, I use goat blood. The third step is chicken feces. You saw the chickens, right? It goes on top of the objects, and the whole thing is left to dry in the sun.
Ils vont marcher, chier dessus. Quand ils vont chier, je vais voir que la patine est déjà vieux. Je vais faire sortir, sécher sur le soleil.
The feces stay on the objects, and eventually they end up looking old.
L'objet est vieux.
Every collector, no matter how much of an expert he is, has fallen for a replica before. I can't name a single one that hasn't. It's happened to me before. I bought an object with great excitement and then realized a month later that I'd been conned. My father was one of the first people, or even the first person, to open a museum in Africa by bringing back items from the Western world. It was great dedication on his part. And I'd say he was very proud to be the one person to actually do something everybody else just talks about doing, returning the cultural goods to Africa.
Mr. David suddenly said he wanted to close down the museum. Just like that. And nobody knew why. He shut it down, and soon everybody knew. The building is still there, but without the items belonging to Mr. David. He took them with him to Switzerland, and we miss them here.
We had to close down the museum due to health reasons. René is weak and ill a lot. We couldn't stay in Togo to carry on the museum, so we shut it down.
My father closed the museum down due to health issues, and the majority of the objects were returned to Europe.
Old masters discovered. An exhibition in Bonn's art gallery exhibits masks from workshops on the Ivory Coast. Finally, visitors realise that old African art is not simply random tribal art. These artists have their own handwriting and names. The colonial point of view starts to expand.
Gewand, das fehlt, die Kapuze, die dazugehört. Sie sehen die Löcher noch, aber die Bestandteile des Masken.
Nevertheless, whether something is beautiful or of good quality and high value, this is still determined by the Western art market.
Many schools and shops emerged in Africa that allow us to admire the art today. But the most important masks have left their home. One could say, right, because you've taken away all our authentic masks, we're going to take the waste you send here to make new masks and sell them back to you.
There are people in town, man, we are people in town, eating bread and butter and honey and drinking black coffee cola. Money is what they like most, money is what they like. And people who have plenty of money belong to high society. But if you could go and see how they live, then you'd discover how savage they are, so much wilder than